Well, hello Internet, and welcome to part 1 of my pre-calculus tutorial. In this series of videos, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know to make learning calculus so much easier, and I have a lot to do, so let's get into it. Alright, so I'm going to teach by solving problems. If you want me to solve more problems like what you have right here, just leave a comment down below and I'll make additional videos. That makes me perfectly happy if you are happy. All right, the very first thing I'm going to cover is solving linear equations and finding slopes. So basically, to solve this equation on the left side of your screen, I'm just going to multiply through. So we have 5 times 2x, and that becomes 10x minus 10. And that is going to be equal to, again, just multiply through 3x minus 3 plus 7. And this is going to get progressively more complicated as we go on here. And then this then becomes 10x minus 10. I'm going really slow here and not skipping any steps just to make sure it's easy to follow. So this is 3x, and then this becomes plus 4, of course. And then we will have 10x is equal to, I'm going to go and add 10 to both sides of our equation. This becomes 3x plus 14. And then we are going to get our x values on one side of our equation, which is going to make this 7x is equal to 14. And then, of course, x is going to be equal to 2. All right, so that's how we go and solve that linear equation. Now I'm going to show you how to find the slope of a line. So the very first thing you need to do is you need to put your equation in this format. Y is equal to mx plus b. So how are we going to do this? Well, we are going to have 3y. We're going to get our y value by itself. And we are going to do that by adding 2x to both sides of the equation, which makes this 2x plus 6. Then I'm going to divide by 3. And I'm going to get y is equal to 2 over 3x plus 2. And this guy right here is our slope. So the slope for this equation is going to be equal to 2/3. Very useful to know. All right, so how do we go and graph an equation like this? Well, we are going to have to understand that once again, we are going to look at this as a form of y is equal to mx plus b. So what do these mean? Well, y is just simply the y variable. And the m right here is going to be our slope. And then finally, the b part represents what we call the y-intercept, which sounds complicated, but it isn't. It's just the value of y whenever x has a value of 0. Because, of course, if x is 0, well then this whole thing becomes 0 and y ends up being equal to b. So what are we going to do? We are going to very first go and put a point at the y-intercept. So that is going to be 0 and 2, like that. So 0 and 2, which is going to be right here. Then what we're going to do is we're going to put another point at the y-intercept plus the numerator of the slope. So what is that? Well, the numerator is up here, so that is 2. So we are going to find that our y value in this situation is 2 plus 2, or 4, of course. Then we are going to find our x value for our next point, and it is going to be equal to whatever the denominator is for our slope. So our next point we are going to draw is going to be at 3, 4. And hopefully you see exactly where that comes from. So we're going to go over 3 spaces, and then we're going to go up 4 spaces. which is going to put us another point exactly right there. And then all we need to do is come in and draw a line between those points. And just like that, not a straight line, but pretty close, and I think you get the gist of what I'm trying to do here. There you go. Did it better that time. All right, and that is how you go and you get an equation and graph it. Now, another thing we're going to need to know is how to put equations in their standard form. Now, the standard form of an equation is going to be ax plus by equal to c. And what we're going to need to do here is to make sure that a, b, and c are integers. Well, you see right here that our equation is using fractions, and that is a big no-no. So how do we go and convert them into integers? Well, we're going to need to find something called the least common multiple for all of these values. And what is that going to be? Well, we're going to have our 3 and our 9. And our 3 is going to just be 3, 6, and 9. There we go, we got 9. And of course, 9 is also going to fit into that equation. So basically what we need to do here is multiply everything in this equation by 9. And if we do that, we're going to get 9y is equal to 3x and minus 1. Of course, whenever we multiply this times 9, this is going to cancel out, leave us with a 3. This is going to become a 1. And again, 9, this cancels out, that cancels out, and we are just simply left with a 1. All right, so that's where that stuff comes from. So now what do we need to do? Well, we need to subtract x to get x and y on the same side. And if we do that, we're going to get negative 3x plus 9y is equal to negative 1. Then we are going to want our first integer to have a positive value, so we're going to multiply everything by negative 1 to make that lead coefficient positive. And if we do that, we get 3x minus 9y is equal to 1. And there you go. That is how you take an equation and put it in its standard form. Now I'm going to cover a couple different things here. Let's say that we know that we have a slope of 3 and that our equation is going to have a point on it for 4 and negative 4. How do we then find an equation for that? Well, we've already talked about the slope. Remember, y is equal to mx plus b. Well, we already have our slope, so we know that this is going to be y is equal to 3x plus b. And then what we are going to do is we're going to take these values up here and insert them in y and x, and then find the value for b. And if we do that, we get negative 4 is equal to, and this is going to end up being 12 because 3 times 4 equals 12, and we are left with b. And if we go and work that out, we of course find that the value for b is equal to negative 16. And then we just go and plug in our known information. Again, the slope and x and minus 16. And there you go. That is how you go and take a known slope and a known point for an equation and find the equation. All right, so how do you find the slope if you have 2 points? Well, you're just going to go and get your y value over here and 0 like that, and you're going to subtract from it the y value right here, which is going to be 4. You're going to divide that by this value right here, 2 minus this value right here, whatever it could be. And if you do that, of course, you're going to get negative 2 as a value. And of course, we could then come in and say y is equal to negative 2. We know our slope, x plus b. We could then find that b is going to have a value of 4. And we could then also find our equation, which is going to be y is equal to negative 2x plus 4. But what if you'd like to find the distance between 2 points? I haven't covered that, so why don't we cover it? So let's say you have a point, which is 3 and 2, and you have another one, which is 10 and 3. Well, we are going to use a formula to make this calculation. And what you do is you take x, the second, the value for x, minus x1, and this is going to be squared. You're then going to add to that the second y value, minus y1 squared, and then you're going to get the square root of it. Sounds complicated, but it really isn't. Okay, so let's just go and plug those values in. So x2, that is going to be this guy right here, is going to be 10, and then minus the other x value. So that is 3 squared plus, and then we're going to get our y values. Again, we're going to have 3 minus 2, and I accidentally put this makes it look like a -3. It is not a -3. It is a +3. Don't want to mess that up. All right, so 3 minus 2 squared. And of course, if we go and do that, we are going to be left with 49 plus 1, which is going to be equal to 50. And then we can go and simplify that down. If we go and do square root again, to 2 times 25, and then simplify that down, we can take the 25 and get the square root of it. That becomes 5, and we're left with our 2 inside of there. And if you're wondering, this is approximately, and this is the approximately sign, the value here is going to be approximately 707. All right, so there you go. That is how to find an equation from the slope and a point. That's how to calculate slope and the distance between points. And that brings us to the fundamental theorem of arithmetic. And that is that all natural numbers are either prime numbers or can be expressed as a product of prime numbers. And that brings us to an extremely important technique, which is finding the greatest common factor. And that is going to be the greatest factor that divides two numbers. And how do we find it? Well, I'm going to show you here. Let's say we have 24 and we have 36. And we want to find our greatest common factor between these two. How we do it is we just go and we say, all right, we have a 24 here, and we want to find a prime that is going to be multiplied times other primes to get us 24. Well, we see that 24 indeed is an even value. So we are going to say, well, 2 times something is definitely going to be equal to 24. Well, what is that something? Well, that's going to be 12. So then we say, all right, well, what prime value are we going to be able to multiply times some other prime value to get 12? Well, 2 again. So we put another 2 inside of there, and that leaves us with a 6. So now what are we going to be able to multiply? Again, 2, and again, 3. And we see here that if you multiply 2 times 2 times 2 times 3, we indeed are going to get 24. We then continue on with 36. All right, well, we can clearly see here that we are going to be able to multiply a 3 times some value and end up with 36. We could also do this with 2, but whatever. I just chose 3. Doesn't matter. You can put a 2 there instead of a 3. It doesn't matter. All right, so what value are we going to multiply times 3 to get 36? Well, that's going to be 12. And so then we just go and figure out, well, what do we multiply to what can we multiply times to get a 12? Well, we can multiply a 3 again. And that's also a prime. And if we do that, what are we going to be left with? We're going to be left with a 4. And how do we get 4? Well, if we multiply 2 times 2, we get a 4. And we're done, and we have all prime values. Now what we need to do is look at which of these values do we have in common here. Well, we see that we have a 2 right here, and we have a 2 right here. And we see that we have a 2 right here, and we also have a 2 right here. We see that we have a 2 up here, but we don't have any more 2s at the bottom, so we can't use it. But we can use this 3 because there's a 3 down here. And now to find our greatest common factor, all we need to do is multiply 2 times 2 times 3. And if we do that, we get a value of 12. And the greatest common factor for 24 and 36 is 12. And that brings us to solving inequalities. And here are the steps on the left side of the screen for solving an inequality. Basically, you want to simplify both sides of your inequality. Add and subtract like terms. You're going to multiply and divide both sides to simplify. Of course, we can multiply and divide unlike terms. And it's very important to remember, if at any point in time you multiply or divide by a negative, you need to flip the inequality. That is this guy. So, and to flip it would be to turn it in the opposite direction. All right? So let's go and work through this. So again, we're going to get 3x plus 12, which is going to be less than 2x minus 1, and 3x plus 13. If we go and add 1 to both sides of this, which is going to leave this 2x over here all by itself. And then we are going to go and get our x values on the same side. And if we do that, we're going to leave this with 13 is less than negative 1x, or negative x, whatever we want. And we want to get our x value by itself, which means we are going to be dividing by negative 1. And remember, if we do that, this becomes a negative 13, of course. But we also have to flip our inequality, and we're left with this right here. And that leaves me with the final part of this video, which is how do we graph inequalities? Well, basically, we're going to rewrite this inequality as an equation. So it's going to become 3x minus 2 is equal to y. Then I'm going to put this in y equals mx plus b form, which is going to make this y is equal to 3x minus 2. I'm going to go and find my y-intercept. What is my y-intercept? It's right there. So it's going to be 0 and negative 2, which is going to be right here on our graph. And maybe you can see it better if I go and draw it like that. I don't know. Either way. Then I need to find my next point. And I don't know if you remember, so I'm going to cover it again. The x in our next point is going to be equal to our slope's denominator. Got a little bit sloppy there. And what is that? Well, that is 1 by default because that's what it is there. So this is going to be 1. Then our y is going to be equal to the numerator, which is 3, as we can see right there, plus our y-intercept. So that's going to be 3 minus 2. So that's going to give us a value of 1. So the next point that we're going to be drawing here is going to be 1, 1. Pretty easy. And let's go and do it with the red one here. Just do it the same way. All right, so there you go. We've got both of those. And of course, you're going to come in here and you're going to draw your line. And there you go. Drew my line in there. Not perfectly straight, but I think you'll be able to bear with that. All right, but this is an inequality. We're not done. So what we're going to need to do here, first off, is that I just did it wrong. Okay, so what we're going to have to do is anytime we're dealing with inequalities, and you can see here I have greater than, well, I'm going to undo that line because it's incorrect. Anytime you are dealing with greater than or less than, you are going to use a dashed line. Dashed line. And anytime you have greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, you'll use a solid line. And the reason why is with the solid line, that's saying that it is being included, everything on the line. If it's less than or equal or less than or greater than, it is not going to be including the things on the line. So what I'm going to do is come in here and draw a dashed line as good as I can do. Let's draw our dashed line inside of there. If you have any questions, of course, leave a comment. I answer my comments that I receive, every single one of them. So just leave a comment and I will get to you. All right, so now what we're going to do is we are going to need to figure out what side of this line we are going to shade. And how we do that is we are going to go and we are going to put in a point, normally a simple one like 0, 0, or something like 0, 1, into our equation and see if it is true. And if it is true, we're going to shade that side towards like the 0, 0 point, for example. And if it's false, we'll shade the other side. So let's just use 0, 0, because it is a point that is not on our line. It's very important to do that. And if we do this, we get 3x minus 2 greater than y. And this is going to work out to be 3 times 0 minus 2 greater than 0. And in this situation, negative 2, of course, is not greater than 0. That means that is false, which means we need to shade opposite the 0, 0 point on our graph, exactly like this. And this is how we graph inequalities. All right, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. And if you have any questions, of course, you can leave questions. And this tutorial is going to continue. So if you want to continue following it, hit the notification bell and maybe YouTube will notify you. All right, so like always, please leave your questions and comments down below. Otherwise, till next time.